want to get a feel of what Lewis and Clark and the Corps of Discovery went through, you need to get off the interstate and you need to stay on the trail.
Yeah.
If you really want to be able to appreciate the history of it, if you want to have any real idea of what they would have seen and what they endured and the hardships of it, you really need to follow the river.
The drive today, it was about a 6-hour drive. We left at 9 a.m., maybe 9:30, 9:20. And I was hoping to get in at 3, but it is already 5:22, and we still have at least another hour of driving.
Yeah.
Which means we're not going to get in until like 6:30 or 7.
Yeah.
So this reminds me of our decision to travel conservatively and the benefits thereof by intentionally scheduling us to get in at 3 if there's any emergencies or unforeseen circumstances. We're still getting in before dark, and that's going to be the case today. There's a lot of not a lot of traffic on this, but it's road construction. So it's a lot of road constructions. We are on Highway 12 going southwest out of Missoula, Montana, and we are driving towards, is it Kingston? Kenningston?
No, Lewiston.
Lewiston.
We won't get that far.
Lewiston, Idaho.
Tonight, but that's the road, that's the direction we're on.
And so this Highway 12 between Lewiston and Missoula, I think it was on a list of like top 50 highways to drive on your motorcycle or something like that. And we have seen a lot of motorcycles, but it really is beautiful. Describe the scenery today.
Very, very dense cedar and pine forests.
Beautiful.
And just rolling mountains, and there's a river right next to the road.
And on the other side of the river is mountains.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous.
We're like in this ravine all day long, going down this mountain. This road just never hits bottom. We just keep going down and down, 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 down.
We're going low, 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 low.
Okay, so ring of fire.
Yeah.
So it took them 5 months to go up the Missouri River from Mandan. Remember the Mandan Indian village in North Dakota? So from North Dakota along the Missouri, through Great Falls, through Helena, up through Missoula, and then Lolo Pass. It took them 5 months to do that. And so they left the Mandan Indian villages in the spring after the ice melted off of the Missouri. So 5 months to get up to the mountains here. So today we stopped at Lolo Pass. There is a visitor center called the Lolo Pass Visitor Center. It's on Highway 12, southwest of Missoula, Montana, right as you cross the border into Idaho. So we stopped there because there were some historical events that happened there with Lewis and Clark. They had camped there.
Okay, so Lewis and Clark started over what is now Lolo, Montana, which is probably the way that you just drove by there.
I thought they started in St. Louis.
Well, they did.
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
They did.
Okay.
They did. Started in St. Louis, but they did stay a couple nights at Traveler's Rest. Did you guys stop at Traveler's Rest on your way?
Did.
So I will get you a brochure for Traveler's Rest here and give you that as well. So they stayed a few days there, and then they came along Lolo Creek here. They came right back here. So this is where we are at the visitor center.
Okay.
They camped just right back here at Glade Creek Camp.
Did they really?
Yep,
How far is
for
that
a
from
night.
here?
So it's about a mile that way.
Okay.
And we have a trail that goes right out to it if you want to walk down to the trail.
Okay.
Yeah. So then they kept going. Doop, 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 doop. Down here, Colt Kill Camp. They stayed there for a night.
Okay.
They had to kill one of their colts and eat it because they were starving and didn't have any food.
This was a rough time for
It
them.
was a rough time. They were kind of lacking food around here.
What time
Not
of
a
the
lot
year was this?
So this was September.
Oh, September. Yeah.
Yep, September
Okay.
13th was when they stayed here in 1805.
1805, September 13th.
They decided to keep going along the river here, and it was
Okay.
very, very dense, thick forest, and it had already snowed too,
Oh, wow.
so it was cold.
But they followed the river.
They did for
And what river is it?
a little ways. So that is what's now the Locksaw River.
Okay.
Locksaw means rough water.
Okay.
And then at Wendover Campground here, about 4 miles past Powell, which is where the ranger office is, the ranger station, the campground. At Wendover Campground, they decided, hey, let's go up this ridge here all the way to the top of the ridge so maybe we can see where we're going.
Okay.
Actually get more of an expansive view of the place. So then they went up the trail here about 7 miles, and that's when they caught up on the Lolo motorway, or the Nez Perce Trail.
Okay.
This is the trail that the Nez Perce have used for thousands of years.
They would winter over there, wouldn't they?
Yep.
Okay.
And they would come over here for the bison on the east
Okay.
side. Then they'd come back across for the salmon on the west side.
Okay.
So is this all a big ridge that they follow?
It is.
No
It's a
kidding.
ridge that they followed all along. And Lewis wrote in his diary when he got up here to the top, he wrote there was about 8 to 10 inches of snow, and his moccasins were soaking wet,
Oh.
but they would still walk every day for miles.
Wow.
So can you imagine trudging through 8 to 10 inches of snow in freezing cold weather with soaking wet feet?
Eee.
So it got pretty
I think we'll just
pretty harsh
drive.
on them.
We'll
Yeah,
drive it.
yeah, I think
Maybe.
so.
You have to understand though, like they would be on the summit of these mountains. They followed a ridge at the top of these mountains, and just looking up here, I mean, that's daunting to think about going up to the top of these and just following a ridge. But they had done that for a really long time. It was a tradition of their people and something they were familiar with, and so they were able to lead Lewis and Clark and the Corps of Discovery on that trail
Yep.
to a place where they could receive food and help and hospitality. So
Because at this point in the journey, there were no maps. There were no European people that had mapped out this area. And so Lewis and Clark, at this point, were completely dependent on the interpreters they had with them and communicating with the Native American tribes. One of the things I was struck by is how many different Native American tribes there were.
Yeah.
And just like in Belize, where there's Mayan, there's Kekchi, and within the Kekchi, there's different dialects.
Yeah.
Well, same thing up here. The native peoples of North America, different languages, different dialects, and Lewis and Clark are really trying to make peace so that they could trade and have peaceful passage back and forth through this new territory to them. I just can't imagine being out here for so long, so far away from everything, and you think about starving, having to kill a horse and eat the horse. Wow.
Later that evening, we arrived at our campground between Kamaya and Kuskia, Idaho. Our RV backed right up to the river, giving us a beautiful view for our stay.
We are in Kuskia, Idaho, and we are going to explore this town of 602 people. Well, after George Bailey rescued Bedford Falls, Potter fell in hard times, and he moved from the East Coast all the way over here to Kuskia, Idaho, and started a mall. This is Potter's Mall.
On the way to our next campground, we stopped at the Nez Perce National Historic Park Visitor Center. During our stop, we watched an excellent movie that explained the values and contributions of the Nez Perce tribe. It gave us a greater appreciation and respect for the life-saving assistance they gave to the Lewis and Clark expedition, and a respect for their regard of nature to provide for their well-being.
Another thing. So one of the things that I'm really excited about with the way that we chose to go about the Lewis and Clark Trail here is we did not plan the trip from major city to major city along interstates the entire way. What we wanted to do was follow the river, and by following the rivers and streams as close as possible to the actual path that Lewis and Clark took, it forces us to get off the interstate. It forces us onto these smaller state highways and then sometimes back roads, and you don't have gas stations every mile. You don't have civilization, but it is so beautiful.
The scenery makes up for it.
Isn't this totally better than driving on an interstate?
Absolutely.
Way better.
Way better.
Well, and not only that, but if you really want to get a feel of what Lewis and Clark and the Corps of Discovery went through, you need to get off the interstate and you need to stay on the trail.
Yeah.
If you really want to be able to appreciate the history of it, if you want to have any real idea of what they would have seen and what they endured and the hardships of it, you really need to follow the river.
Yeah, like it's one thing to look at a map and you see a dotted line. Well, this is the Lewis and Clark Trail. You don't have a concept of that. And then it's another thing actually to drive from major city to major city following the interstate. It's again like, oh, okay, they got from here to there. But when you're on these smaller highways following these rivers, you see a part of the country that not a whole lot of people see. The kids, you remember in Cars, the first Cars movie?
Yeah.
Where Lightning McQueen at first looked down on, despised Radiator Springs and the people of Radiator Springs.
Yeah.
But then he came to appreciate the people and to appreciate the beauty of that. And remember there was that, I think there was a song and a montage in Cars where, what's
Life is a highway?
Life is a highway. Oh, no, what's the female character?
Oh, Sally.
Sally. Where Sally is kind of given the history that Radiator Springs used to be on Route 66.
Oh, long ago.
What's that?
Long ago.
Oh, yeah.
Long ago.
And so
very long ago.
So Sally gives this history of Radiator Springs where it used to be on Route 66 and people would stop there, but then they built the interstates and the
People
traffic.
stop, yeah.
The traffic just went by and nobody would stop anymore. And that movie really has a point that to get off the interstates, to stop at these small towns and explore the culture, the people. That is a huge rock
Yeah.
in the middle of water. Wow. Yeah, and so I really feel like cars inspired how we're going about in this trip, that we're not going a typical route.
It was destiny that my first words were vroom vroom.
Vroom, vroom. Gideon's first words. Vroom, vroom. Giddy, you love the movie Cars.
I did. It's my favorite movie of all time.
Nice.
It's better than Cinderella, and that's a classic.
Welcome to Hermiston, Oregon. We are staying at Hat Rock Campground. It's a private campground just across the street from Hat Rock State Park, and hopefully we'll get to explore that a little bit while we're here. But within the first, I would say 3 or 4 hours of being here, of arriving and getting set up, we have seen God answer some major prayers.
Did Lewis and Clark come through here?
They did, yeah.
Wow, did they buy some books here?
Yeah, they did.
Got some free coffee?
Sold them lots of books, and
Oh, they left a really generous donation too for the coffee.
Nice.
they did. They enjoyed the
Like the whole Louisiana purchase they left for you there.
Yeah.
No, we didn't do.
What did we not do?
We didn't do sleep.
Kids are tired from staying up too late?
No, I actually went to bed right away. You just woke me up.
Oh.
No, you woke me up.